somebody watching the clock?
I always do.
Okay. Aloha.
Aloha.
Because we have Memorial Day coming up very soon, in a couple of days, I went back in my memory and came up with a poem. And it might be a little bit rough, but this is what I have so far. Memorial Day, 1977. The wind arrived on time in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, a small town in a wide state where trees were big because they were old and houses taller than wide. This was back when fire engines were red. We waited in front where there was no yard on the porch stoop, made crooked by elm roots. The wind carried a gentle thumping, more of a feeling than a sound. It was far away. In Orwigsburg, we didn't go to the parade. The parade came to us. Building over minutes, the sound became drumming. Big noise for a small town. Flags came into view. The VFW color guard struggled the flags through a precision left turn onto North Washington Street where we waited. We heard music behind the drumming, closer and closer. The old soldiers stopped in front of us. They pivoted and faced the house across the street. An old woman stood alone on her front porch and faced the veterans. It was quiet then. In the front window hung a banner with a gold star. Bill said it meant she lost a boy in the war. The one giving orders barked something, and they saluted the mother. She looked at them. She stood straight, leaning against the wind. They pivoted back, and the parade moved forward. Of course, the mayor was next. He wore a hat and held on to it in the back of a convertible driven by the smiling Chevy dealer. Next, a high school band with bad horns. Bill said there were no flutes since no one wanted to take flute. Followed by Boy Scouts and 4-H kids with rabbits, ladies auxiliary wearing white, and kids on bikes with streamers. A red fire truck brought up the rear and continued up the street. Bill said the parade would end at the cemetery at the edge of town. He said some folks call it Decoration Day, since the graves were decorated with flags and such. The wind followed the procession and moved on toward the cemetery. The noise faded. Bill and I turned and went inside to look for a beer. Next year at the same time, the wind would come again looking for fresh flags.
What was the title of that?
Memorial Day, 1977. This is pretty recent. I don't have too much new work. This is relatively new from a few months ago. This was a challenge someone gave to us at Ma'alaya on one of our retreats. And as I remember, there were only about 5 people sitting around listening when we revealed what we'd written. So this is called Bridge.
Oh, yes.
Lawrence, frustrated, indents the page with what he needs to say. He sees only drought. So he snaps flame from his fingertips, a trick he learned as a 10-year-old. Heating the pen point to urge the gurgle, to tease the ink, the flow which was to be the structure he wants to engineer, the bridge between shapes and syllables and tongue, lips and busy teeth, to carry us from one shore to the other of his invisible river. His trick flame fails. Hungry still, he says, "Does anybody have an extra pen?" Only one of you has heard this before. I wrote this for Cindy on Valentine's Day. Very short. I awoke in the middle of the night and showed Smoofy, that's our cat, showed Smoofy the play of moonlight on my hand. A thought about you appeared, fully formed. I did not think it, merely let it unreal. Before I met you, I was a bucket of brine. Now, because of you, I am transformed. I am broth. I am warmed and warming broth of pan, of bowl, of spoon, soothed and soothing. Thank you for bringing worth to my while. You are my home. I love you, Cindy. I've got the crowd on my side now.
Works every time.
This involves a couple of our spectators here tonight. Anyway, this is something I came up with, 8 years ago? Quite a long time ago. It's called Robin and Manny. Satin nuzzling velvet. She leans in close when he asks quietly of a distant voice, "Who is that?" She whispers in reply. His face is in the dark. The lantern light reveals the giggle on her lips, a smile that says love, such a smile, girlish, tender, and it's not even Valentine's Day.
Never trust your writer. You'll wind up on their pages.
It's been a little while since I've read this. We had a challenge one evening, Hell and High Water Poets.
Yeah.
And I heard it in a little twisted way, and so this is what I came up with. Hell and High Water Poets. This is Helen Highwater Poets Agency. Helen speaking. Metaphors, similes for all occasions. When you are at a loss for words, Helen Highwater will wrangle the beast for you. When an eroded expletive is just not sufficient, when you're lock, stock, and stuck writing that wedding toast, when you just can't find a synonym for thesaurus, let Helen Highwater Poets Agency tackle, handle, wrestle, accept the job for you. At the tone, please leave your name and number. I don't know if anyone else came up with a poem from that challenge, but probably.
No one got what you got.
I should have brought
We
in
had a lot of
my
fun with
cell
that,
phone.
but you had a lot of
He
us
would
all
make a
rolling.
message for me on my cell phone.
Helen Highwater.
I did this one in the Eau Valley when we were there
For the retreat.
on a special little outing one weekend a couple of years ago. And I call this Faith in Pieces of Circles. Each night shall we mourn the loss of brother's son. Each day shall we feel orphaned by sister moon. Eau koa leaf curves, it ascends and bows at once in glory and humility, and knows the exalted and exalter are one.
up there, maybe.
This is called What Color is the Wind? The wind is the color of teriyaki, of sweet basil under fingernails, of tomato vine fuzz and Tootsie Rolls. The wind is the color of squinting, of salt crust on temples, molasses grass on laces, the perfume of manure. It's the color of starboard, of number 6 fuel oil, of pitman arms and pistons pumping the night, of rain 2 minutes coming, of cardboard for a mattress, of creosote cured by wood smoke. The color of an egg without a nest, the color of forest moss at midnight, of skin freshly wet, of furnaces silenced by regret, the color of a baby's first kiss, the color of a telephone ring, of a tabloid horoscope, of tomorrow's headline. It's the color of a thumb removed from a trigger, an axe handle smoothed by a farmer long dead. Wind is the color of memory colliding with now. It's the color of hope. Okay. I want to get this one in. This is called New Zealand. There's another character named Bill in this. This is a very different Bill than the one in my first poem. New Zealand. Never been there, but I can see it. A city called Christchurch, but the rounded green hills, that's mostly what I see. Grasslands on craggy hills rolling, its island self. Sheep, more sheep than people, and smiling people hiking, taking deep breaths. And it's quiet, and there's wind, green. It's like Ireland, I guess, but maybe steeper. And Bill was going there for a month. He said, I always wanted to see New Zealand, he said. So off he went. I knew him by his resolute waddle, energetic enough, a fat man who delivered the fat bundle of Honolulu advertisers each morning at about 4:30. For a long time, something about him scared me. I was disturbed by his saying he'd left his family in New Jersey and moved alone to Maui. His kids were ingrates, he said, just like his wife. All he had provided. That break with his past disturbed me. Didn't want to look at that. Might be too much like me. He gave me his card. I didn't call. I grew to avoid him. I'd see his van enter the gate and stand silently in the shadows. Didn't want that contact. Eventually, I outgrew that stage. After all, we were fellow night cats on the night shift. 15 years, 16 years. Jovial he was. Mr. Wilson, he'd say. Grumpy and good-natured. He'd reply, same old shit, when I asked how he was doing. Pleasantly predictable. He started trimming down. Looking good, I said. Didn't hit me that he'd stopped saying same old shit. A woman filled in for him for the New Zealand trip. She zipped in with those Honolulu advertisers and scrammed. Routine. Weeks. One night I flagged her down in the parking lot. When's Bill coming back? I'm sorry. He died 5 weeks ago. He was filled with cancer. I said I was sorry. I didn't know. On the steep, grassy slopes, outnumbered by sheep, Bill. I can see him. He's one of the smiling, happy people laughing on the grassy, green slopes there in New Zealand. Time for 3.
Yep, you're still going.
Okay. One of our members is a very colorful character, so I had to write a colorful poem for him for Christmas a few years ago. It's called Tim Kelly.
I was hoping for this one.
He's a mystery man. Every day he reveals a tidbit from the new fiction of his autobiography. I'm convinced he's on the lam from a secret life, an unarticulated past in Birmingham. I'd swear he's in the Poet Protection Program. Despite this, he does not keep a low profile. I imagine him to be Calvert Kincaid, a jovial possum of a man from a mudded, questionable line of blue bloods suffering the indelicacies of post-bellum life in Birmingham. He is an escapee from a John Grisham novel, a fallen attorney in an ivory suit, Panama hat, fingering his omnipresent scotch. He has dogs that live under the house. He talks his way into hospitals after hours and into last wills and testaments. He once appeared in drag and looked quite attractive in a production of The Glass Menagerie, but for unexplained reasons, scene 6 was interrupted by law enforcement. He is a middle-aged frat boy with cheeks still ruddy 3 days after some incident he won't divulge regarding Harper Lee's rose bushes. But don't believe a word of this Faulknerian legend. Don't blame Tim. The above words come from my twisted mind. In truth, Tim Kelly has always depended on the kindness of strangers like H.D. Moe. Tim navigates the vagaries of fortune with erudition and horse sense and bluster. All I need to know about Tim Kelly is the compassion I hear when he speaks of small brown legs amid the rubble of the 16th Street Baptist Church. All I need to know about Tim Kelly is the deep tenderness I see as he reads a love poem secreted onto his private screen without raising his eyes. Without raising his eyes, what is genuine is revealed in his eyes, what I see in his moist eyes.
About 2 more minutes?
Yeah. Oh, 2 more minutes. Okay. I'm going to close with this for the Memorial Day weekend. Several years ago, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Maui News to give my feelings about Memorial Day. And this is what I came up with. It is a letter to the editor, but hope you bear with me. Memorial Day is dawning as I write this, the day we remember our American war dead. The rhetoric of our annual ceremonies expresses the pride we feel for those who offered the last full measure of devotion. But, in fact, we managed to keep a large portion of that pride for ourselves, as if our warriors' willingness to sacrifice somehow makes noble our cause. As Americans, not even in our prayers are we humble, for we see ourselves as the anointed ones, the rightful occupants of our preeminent, shining city on a hill. We suppose that we have forged the most advanced civilization in history. So, how do we as a nation react when faced with a serious challenge? From our lofty perch, what is the most highly evolved response we manage to summon as a result of engaging all of our intellect and experience and insight What course of action do we choose to best serve our highest ideals and aspirations? We send our children out into the streets to kill other people's children. Forgive me if I conclude that Memorial Day is a day not to puff out our chests in national pride, but rather a day to mournfully acknowledge our grotesque lack of imagination in sending our youth to war.
Grader from Kilauea Elementary School, and it was a young man